meeting is about to start. If everyone can grab their seats, please. Mr. Clerk, the time is 7:01 p.m. on June 2nd, 2015. I'd like to call the General Committee meeting to order. That said, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
As amended.
As amended. Moved by Mayor Dahl and seconded by Councillor Tom. Questions or comments on the agenda? I'll call the vote then. All in favor? As amended? Anyone opposed? Okay, that carries. So, determination of items requiring separate discussion. I will start from my left. May I start with you, Councillor Puri, please? None tonight? Mayor Dahl? Councillor Tom?
None for me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Number one. And number five, please, Mr. Chair.
1 and 5. Councillor Thompson?
Items 3 and items 8, please.
Councillor Marcus?
Item 4, please.
Item 4. So I'll just confirm the following items that were pulled. Items 1, 3, 4, 5, and 8.
Item 7, too, please.
Item 7.
Recognized.
Okay, 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. May I have a motion to adopt the items not requiring separate discussion? Okay, moved by Councillor Abel, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you. We have 2 delegations today. And the first one is representative of Rogers Communications, Ms. Tatiana Morrow.
Ask her to state her name.
Okay. So please state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, Your Worship and councillors, members of staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I wanted to give you a quick presentation in regards to a joint proposal by Bell and Rogers for a wireless communications site to be located at 1030 Bloomington Road. The ongoing increase of use of personal cellular phones and other wireless devices, as well as internet for business and emergency purposes, requires development of wireless sites. Improvement of wireless coverage also means better access to emergency services such as EMS, police, and fire. Communication technology continues to fundamentally transform the way we communicate and run our businesses. As the technology changes and advances, so does the nature of the demand. Wireless communication usage is estimated to exponentially increase due to the growing number of people working from home, average cell phone users per households, as well as new smartphones with new data capacity and versatilities. Due to this change in technologies, the only way to meet this demand is build new infrastructure. How does a wireless network operate? A wireless network looks like a honeycomb. Each comb is actually a cell site that provides coverage to a number of users. When the number of users at a cell site increases, the capacity of it decreases, therefore creating gaps in coverage. Installation of new sites is essential to fill these gaps in coverage in order to provide the continuous coverage for our customer base. Many aspects go into site selection process, such as expected usage and expected demand from our customers, local topography, line of sight requirements, our site needs to communicate with one another, opportunities to co-locate on existing structures, and availability of a willing host. The The particular site that we're proposing here by Rogers of Bell is demonstrated here on the coverage plots provided by Rogers Engineers and where our coverage gap is. This slide provides you with existing and what the future coverage scenarios are. Dark blue reflects excellent in-building and outdoor coverage. Light blue reflects good street level coverage as well as in-building, and green reflecting overall poor, unreliable in-building coverage. Therefore, the need for this site is required for both Bell and Rogers. This area just provides you with an area of an ideal candidate. As you can see, the marker in yellow, that's where the search area is provided by radio engineers, where the site would be optimal to address our objectives. Wireless technology is a proximity technology, therefore we need to be where our users are. As part of this proposal, other potential properties were evaluated. Our dilemma comes down to locating sites where they will be at least visually obtrusive, possibly locating sites in areas of industrial and commercial setting, minimizing the number of sites in the area, as well as locating away from residential zone while trying to address our coverage needs. Other properties that were assessed, even though they were outside of the coverage area, we assessed them in order to try to find a suitable alternative that would work for both carriers. The most suitable available alternative that had a willing host is on the Kirkoni auto recycling facility plant. It is in a commercial setting, and it's the best available alternative in the area that would address the coverage needs of both carriers. The initial site was located behind the residential dwelling owned by the landowner on the southwest corner. During the public consultations undertaken in August of last year, Rogers has heard comments from the community with the request to set the site further away from the residential on the subject property. Therefore, Rogers had worked with the landowner and had relocated the site further away to the eastern boundary. The new location provided an additional buffer between the residential to the west as well from our site. The site is proposed as 35-meter monopole with antennas on small pinwheel in order to minimize the visual impact of the installation. It takes into consideration the commercial setting of the area. It's set on the property further to the east in order to provide an additional buffer, and houses 2 carriers, which meets the intent of the town's protocol. This map just provides you with other sites that were evaluated for co-location opportunities. Unfortunately, they were either too far away from our search area or not applicable in height that would address our coverage needs. Rogers has undertaken an extensive consultation on this proposal. Sorry, now I'm running out of time, so I'm panicking here. We take our public info as important elements of the proposal, and in order to accommodate the request from the public, they attended the public meeting and submitted comments. Rogers has done its best to make concessions in order to move the site further away from residential. In addition, we had postponed going to council because we found out the Bell was looking in the area. So therefore, in order to eliminate the additional site in the area, Rogers, Bell, and the town have worked together in order to provide a proposal with one joint site instead of having 2 sites in the area. Thank you very much. If there's any other questions, I do know there's a delegate, and if there's any questions, I can certainly answer them further. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morrow. May I have a motion to receive and refer the delegation to item 3, please? Moved by Councilor Marcus, seconded by Councilor Thompson. At this time, do we have any questions or concerns that we want to outline to Ms. Morrow? Mayor Dahl?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ms. Morrow. You did mention that the town protocol has been followed. I just wish to confirm that that is the case.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The protocol has been followed 3 times, actually. We've held 2 public open houses, as well as we provided recirculation to the community once Bell has decided to come on the tower, and we try to do a joint proposal. So therefore, Rogers has followed above and beyond what the requirements of the protocol are.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll have some more questions when the item comes up. Thank you, Ms. Morrow.
Thank you.
Councilor Hayden?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You don't talk about the health. They are radio frequency waves, and do they meet all the guidelines? And could you comment on that, please?
So, Mr. Chair, wireless carriers, an industry that is not, we're not self-regulated. We don't set any standards. We have strict adherence as part of our license requirement to comply with Safety Code 6, which is Health Canada's regulatory document that Industry Canada adopted as their document. Rogers complies with all the regulations. It is mandated that we submit calculation to Industry Canada before any of our sites are put in service on what the emissions of the structures will be. At any time, Industry Canada can go in and check our calculations and basically can revoke our license if we don't comply with those. In this particular site, our engineers have conducted the calculations on the site, and it will be at 2% of safety code limits that are set by Health Canada. Therefore, we don't just meet, we exceed the allowable limit by a significant margin. And to put it simply, is basically we're driving 2 kilometers on a 100-kilometer highway.
And, Mr. Chair, if I may, the 35 meters, we had another one that you were involved in on St. John's. Was that significantly higher? It seems to me 60 meters, 65?
Yes, through Mr. Chair, yes, it was a 60-meter tripole. That's correct.
Okay, so this is almost half that height?
That is correct.
And could you give me an idea of the increase in usage, percentage-wise of the population, say in our demographic, that utilize this?
So, Mr. Chair, the way it works, it doesn't work on numbers of people. It's actually worked on what devices are using. It's all about data and it's streaming. It's not just cell phones and how many users are utilizing the tower. It's all about the type of usage that is being used. So normally towers of 30 meters cover a range of about 3 to 5 kilometers in coverage. But again, where the densely populated areas are, the capacity decreases because of more usage for specifically data. So therefore, there's no specific number as to how many users there are. It's about what kind of usage there is on the tower.
And last question, Mr. Chair. The picture that you showed where the tower has been relocated, what would be the closest line to a resident's house?
Through the Chair, the closest property line is 116 meters away. The dwelling is 145 meters away from the site.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have a question as well. I noticed that with the change of the site, I'm not sure what the distance was, I forget, maybe 100 meters or so, the height of the tower increased by 5 meters. With such a small distance in variance, is it necessary to go up another 5 meters? Does that impact the reception?
No, the increase in height was actually to accommodate the other carrier, which is Bell. Bell was looking for a 40-meter structure, so therefore, in order to accommodate both carriers, the concessions were made that at 35 meters, it would address the objectives for both carriers and eliminate that another tower in the area.
Councilor Peary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, looking at the original location versus the new location, you can't help but notice that it's directly in front of one resident's house, 140 meters away. Is there an opportunity to move that new location south 20 or 30 meters so it's not directly in view? I know if I was opening my door and I saw this huge tower every day, it's not something that would be appealing at all. If you were to extend along Offord Crescent, and draw an imaginary line and putting it, south a little bit, it's a little bit less intrusive towards the residents in the neighborhood. I was wondering if that's something that you've given any consideration to?
So if I may through the chair, it's also the consideration of the landlord and the use of the property. We worked with the landlord. We moved the site a couple of times in order to accommodate what their usage was. He needs access to his property as well as to turn around with the trucks. So therefore, unfortunately, we can't go any further south. And the reason why I understand it's in the direct view of the front of the property. However, we normally try to locate it away from backyards of properties because that seems to be more of where people spend their time. So the biggest concern was more of having direct view from backyards. Again, we can't appease every request. It's really difficult to hide our sites. Unfortunately, we are quite large in order to provide the coverage. However, this seemed to be the most appropriate based on the comments received. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If no one else has a second round of questions, I just have one last question. I did some research, and most of the research done on RF waves and and how it impacts humans. It seems like there's negligible impacts, as RF waves has no impacts on chemical bonding in the human body. But has there been any long-term studies that's been done? And I know it's only been the last 20 years that RF waves have been used in such frequency. Is Rogers aware of any long-term studies that...
Rogers follows, yes, Rogers follows what Health Canada standards are. We don't actually look into standards. We don't have doctors that are qualified to review the research, so therefore we trust that the government body, they do review this with World Health Organization. To follow statistics, there's Royal Society of Canada has reviewed the Safety Code 6 4 times now and have still come conclusive that there is no evidence of any health effects. Technology has been in our use since the 80s, and so far there's been nothing to date that clearly states that there is any indication of health effects. Okay. So therefore, Rogers follows it with strict adherence requirements.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I'll call the vote then. All in favor to receive? Opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you very much.
We have one more delegate.
Just use the same sheet.
Okay, and that is Dr. Azam Khan. Please state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes, sir.
My name is Azam Khan. I'm at 15 Babcock Boulevard. That's the house that's closest to the proposed tower in Aurora. Thank you, Chair Kim, and the opportunity to speak to Mayor Don, members of council. As the designated spokesman for the residents of the town of Aurora in this matter, we call for a vote of non-concurrence against the proposed cell tower site. Rogers, in their statement that you have, admitted that there's not, finding a site for a tower is not an exact science. So obviously this tower can be placed somewhere else where the residents are not disturbed. For example, the town of Oakville regulated a 200-meter setback of cell towers from homes. Richmond Hill voted non-concurrence on a proposed site on expert evidence provided by Professor Havis from Trent University in Peterborough, relating that countries, including Germany and Israel, are not allowing towers any closer than 400 meters from homes and schools. Furthermore, there's no way to prove that continuous microwave radiation from cell towers is safe. On the map that Rogers attachment on page 19 of the General Committee meeting agenda, it's clear Rogers made no attempt to contact the completely empty lot neighboring the self-storage facility or any empty lands beyond that. It's also clear on the map that there's no increased capacity or need for more coverage in the area, as there's not even been one new residence built in the area for over 15 years. Finally, the documents state that they have compiled with regulations that are outdated and have not mentioned the current required process agreement called the Antenna System Siting Protocol Template, developed for the Canadian Wireless Telecommunication Association by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities that came into effect almost a year ago in July of 2014. Rogers and Bell have agreed to this process as members of the CWTA, and the town of Aurora has agreed to this process as a member of the FCM. Whether this omission is deliberate or a mistake, the current plans are not valid as they haven't followed the current required process. I was made aware of this by Lois Brown, MP for Newmarket Aurora, who also notified the Minister of Industry. The purpose of the FCM agreement is to establish land use consultation framework that ensures the municipality and members of the public contribute local knowledge that facilitates and influences the siting, location, development, and design of antenna systems within municipal boundaries. In fact, as presented in the attachments, proposing a single site to be accepted or rejected is improper. The FCM guidelines clearly stipulate the two types of information be proposed to the municipality. First, a set of proposed sites should be presented to the township, not a single site. Second, the respondent should present a criteria to be used in the decision-making process. These two pieces of information should be presented to the town so they can evaluate all the proposed sites to narrow down the set of proposed sites, helping in the decision-making process. Since the agreed-upon FCM process has not been followed, the current proposal is malformed, and the site planning process should obviously be restarted and more carefully follow the required FCM guidelines and comply with Industry Canada. I propose the committee be formed to apply the required FCM process, and I respectfully volunteer to lead or join such a committee. As a highly qualified resident in the town of Aurora, as director of a major global corporation and with a PhD in computer science, I'm happy to manage the FCM process on behalf of the town to ensure that industry candidate guidelines are followed. Finally, since there's no clear need to accept the proposed site on behalf of the local residents of the town of Aurora, we formally request that you reject the proposed site with a vote of non-concurrence. Secondly, request that you assign a member of the local community to work with the respondents through all of the official steps of the FCM guidelines to ensure a proper site is found, as recommended by our federal member of Parliament, Lois Brown. Thank you for the opportunity to address the council.
Thank you, sir. May I have a motion to receive and refer the delegation to item 3? Moved by Councillor Abel, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Questions or comments for the delegate, please? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you for coming this evening. It's my understanding, and we'll confirm it when we talk to staff, but that this council actually did adopt those protocols that you talked about through FCM in 2014. And so we'll confirm it when we go back to staff. But we're certainly very aware of it. A number of us were at FCM when those were brought forward, and so certainly having had prior experience having conversations around cell towers, many of us who were here last term wanted to see those protocols in place and did direct staff to adopt them.
Councillor Humphries?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. My apologies for being late, and I understand the concerns clearly, and thank you for the information. Will there be an opportunity for the rest of council to get the information that he shared this evening at the podium in writing?
I can distribute that.
Perfect. I'd like to see a copy of that. Thank you.
Councillor Abel?
Thank you, and thank you very much. I enjoyed your presentation. You mentioned that in Germany and Israel they had moved the residential boundary to 400 meters.
Yes.
Were you able to conclude that the tower has to be now taller to accommodate that?
Good question. I'm assuming that, I would assume that that's not the case, the need for that, but it would completely depend on the local conditions. So as the other delegate presented, the honeycomb structure depends on the local density, and since there's been no increase in density in our area, that's why there's clearly no need for a tower right there.
Well, and I totally agree.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you, sir. So we have one advisory committee meeting minutes on tonight's agenda. Do the chairs have anything to present? Okay. We'll move on to the next item. So go to consideration of items requiring separate discussion. First, I just want to poll the audience. Is there anyone in the audience that are here for a particular item? Number 3. Okay, so may I have a motion to move forward by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Marakis. We will start with all in favor of moving that forward, please. Opposed? Okay, that carries. Item 3 was pulled by Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Through Mr. Marino, is there a motion to move it forward or recommendation on the floor? And if it's okay for now, I'll just leave the position of concurrence, non-concurrence open for the moment to get some questions.
Okay.
Through Mr. Marino.
Seconded by Councillor Marakis.
Thanks, no problem. Mr. Marino, one of the questions that's been raised with regard to the process and whether or not it adhered to the protocol that Council had previously adopted, and which is now the current process with regards to, community community consultation, and what is recommended by both FCM, the Canadian Wireless Telecom Association, and so forth. Could you provide some clarification on whether or not it adheres to the current process or previous?
Certainly. So, Mr. Chair, I guess it was early in 2014, we did, at Council's direction, we did amend the Town of Aurora's protocol to comply with not only Industry Canada, but the FCM protocol as well. I don't have the actual date in front of me, but our protocol, town protocol, does comply with both standards, and the process followed by Rogers and Bell complied with our protocol.
Again, through you to Mr. Romero, and for those that may not know the process fully, the request tonight is to determine council's position being concurrence or non-concurrence, but essentially, Industry Canada is the regulatory body of this, and even if council were to put forward a position of non-concurrence, it does not necessarily prevent that cell tower from going forward, because at the end of the day, the actual arbitrator or decider is Industry Canada. Is that correct?
To you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. Industry Canada has the jurisdiction over these antennas, and if there was a non-concurrence or non-consent by council, it would then be up to the provider, Rogers or Bell, to enact the dispute resolution procedure that Industry Canada has established.
Thank you. And you know, I do want to say that I do appreciate the work of yourself and Ms. Morrow in putting the report together. I know last term when we were presented with a number of these applications, a lot of questions were unanswered in the reports, and so there was a lot of discussion as well as questions asked of the delegates when they came, and I thought that this report was very, very thorough in terms of responding to the questions that come up time and time again with regards to the cell towers, and certainly appreciate your efforts in ensuring that they were co-located, because I know that from this council's perspective is it importance that we reduce the number of cell towers to the best of our ability. So thank you for your efforts.
Councillor Humphries?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there an opportunity to, and I apologize, I didn't see the previous presentation, so I get caught up later. Is there an opportunity to work with Rogers and Bell to move this tower to the location that the delegate mentioned, just a little further up, where it's less obstructive and behind this beautiful neighborhood? It's going to be another Bathurst Street situation, and I want to avoid that. I mean, I know that you've done a great job, absolutely, and there's answers to the questions, and we're way ahead of where we were last year, but I just hate the fact of having that thing there. And I used to work for Bell, so I can say that. I don't like having that tower. There's an opportunity to negotiate with the height of the tower to be further up in the area where it's not in someone's backyard. Excuse me, and just to add, in a very established area.
Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Mr. Romero?
Through Mr. Chair, I know Ms. Morrow responded previously that, they're working with the landlord with respect to, the location that is also going to suit the landlord and not conflict with his business. And there has spent some time with the landlord in trying to find a suitable site. I mean, obviously Ms. Morrow is hearing the concerns. That's always an option for her to go back to, again, try and negotiate a different location, on site if that's acceptable to the landlord.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. If there's anything you can help the neighborhood be more welcoming of having, we need the communication, absolutely. It's just, working with the landlords in areas that's less obstructive, less in a residential area, a very established area, a beautiful area, to have the tower in someone's backyard. We've had this before. I really hope that Bell heard us earlier and Rogers is going to hear us now. I know it's out of our control if Bell and Rogers insist. Industry Canada will absolutely make the decision, and we'll take the one that's fair, and business is going to win. But I really hope that the businesses hear the residents and try to put this where it needs to be to make us welcome of it, and again, less intrusive in the existing residential area.
Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I wanted to just touch on a point that the delegate made, the second delegate, that I think it was the city of Oakville,
bylaw, I guess, that was just passed was that there had to be a 200-meter separation from residences to cell towers. And then he mentioned that Israel and Germany, there's a 400-meter separation. So I guess, and because I'm new on council, and this issue is fairly new to me as well, I would like to ask through you, Mr. Chair, to perhaps Mr. Ramuno, through the new protocol that the town has put forward, what is the stipulation for distance between residences and cell towers?
To Mr. Chair, apologize, I don't have it in front of me, but based on Industry Canada's protocol and our protocol, it really speaks to minimizing the distance between towers and residential areas. So I don't recall there being a minimum separation distance, nor does Industry Canada have a minimum separation distance, but part of the criteria is to try and locate them, as far away from residential areas, keeping in mind that obviously the providers need the coverage for the areas, and but it's always a consideration to try and minimize the separation distance between residential and future towers.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Ramuno. I think perhaps maybe for next week, maybe we could get some of the information. I'm not sure if it's possible to look at what Oakville did and why. What was the rationale for 200 meters, and what was the rationale for, I mean, and this might be more difficult to get, and perhaps the delegate's information, if he sends it to us, for why Israel and Germany mandate 400 meters of separation. So those are my comments at this point in time. Just like to get some of that information. Thank you.
Councilor Abel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, I believe the delegate for Rogers said that the coverage was 4 to 5 kilometers, weakening as it went. Maybe that's not a fair question. Okay. Perhaps I can find that out for next week or some other time. It seems to me that the second delegate said that there's no new residential in the area. And I seem to think that at Bloomington and Bayview and running west in Richmond Hill, there's a significant amount of coverage. And it may be that north of that in our, I think we call it steeplechase, they may want their coverage improved. And also on Leslie Street, just north of Bloomington, there's a new condo development in there. So I'm trying to sense the need for the tower, and in my mind, this would be right in the middle. And that's what I'm sort of concluding the need is for. So I appreciate the comment, and I said I agree with it, but the new residential or no new residential in that immediate area with Babcock is well established. There hasn't been anything around that area, but when I look at that perimeter, I think there has been some. That's just a comment, and most of the other concerns have been addressed through the other councillors about protocol, and had we followed it. So would MP Lois Brown be incorrect assuming that it wasn't assumed that we didn't follow the FCM but we had? I think Councillor Thompson made sure that was correct. Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, that's it.
Well, if there are no further questions, I'd like to... Councillor Maracus. Oh, Councillor Maracus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to, I guess, to Mr. Marr or Mr. Ramuno, I don't know who will answer this. Is this another case of another case? This, like, Industry Canada has jurisdiction over the municipality?
Through Mr. Chair, yes, this is a case where Industry Canada has a court-tested jurisdiction over this particular area.
Okay, thank you. This is a follow-up. And if we, I mean, we just heard Councillor Tom mention that Oakville, and the delegate that Oakville passed the bylaw stating that towers can only be restricted to 200 meters within residential. So if we enacted a bylaw similar to that, would they not be able to just come in and say, well, we're not going to follow that?
Mr. Chair, I would have to do some more investigation as to where the City of Oakville believes it, what town of Oakville believes it has the authority to do that. I believe under the current regime,
Industry Canada and the wireless communications industry could ignore that, because they have to follow the Industry Canada guidelines as negotiated with FCM as part of the Canadian Wireless Telecommunications Association. So that's what they've agreed to as part of giving the municipalities a say in the process, but I would need to investigate further and find out why the town of Oakville feels it has authority to do that.
Thank you. I guess, just as a comment, I'd like to enact a bylaw where we state how many meters these can be put within residential areas. So, I mean, I'm all for that, and I'll just leave it at that for now.
Okay. The clerk at this time has a comment for the item. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just procedurally, we would need a motion to either delete the word concurrence or the word non-concurrence from the third clause of the motion.
May I have a motion?
For clarification, the current third clause says that the council's position is of concurrence or non-concurrence. General committee needs to make a choice, and the way to do that is to move an amendment to delete either the word concurrence or delete the word non-concurrence. Sanders got a motion.
Okay, Councillor Humphrey will put the amendment on the floor.
I'd like to put forward the amendment of removing concurrence and going with the position of non-concurrence regarding the proposed 35-meter height.
Okay. Delete the words non-concurrence?
Yes, delete the word, hang on, concurrence. Leave non-concurrence, and if I can have a seconder to that.
Second. Councillor Marcus.
Questions and comments on the
amendment? So any comments on the amendment, please? Councillor Marcus, Councillor Thompson?
Typically with non-concurrence, we have to provide a letter to Industry Canada stating the reasons and rationale, so perhaps Councillor Humphreys can specify how it doesn't comply with our municipal requirements.
Through Mr. Chair, what I'd like to suggest is that I'd like to first of all, get absolute confirmation that we have complied. I know you've heard that from staff, but just one more time, making sure that's clear, because we heard there's a letter from Lois Brown stating that we did not follow procedure, or that the telecommunications industry have not. Can I get that clarification? And if I get that, then I'm going to put a proposal together and we'll put in the letter.
Councillor Tom?
Yes, I can get.
Oh, sorry. Is there any comments on that? Mr. Rumino?
My apologies, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair. Can you repeat the question?
Just real quickly, Mr. Chair, just 100% confirm that we have followed the new procedure that we adopted at FCM last year. Just making sure that the communications companies have done the same.
Certainly, and as I mentioned, I'm not aware of any new protocol that's been issued, and we have complied, but I'll certainly report back next week.
If you can confirm that next week, that's perfect, just so we're making sure that we reused the new protocol, because some of the information sessions were prior to that, I think. The second I'd like to add is just that I liked that we're not concerned that we believe that this tower is being addressed or created in a very established area, that there's still opportunity to talk with landlords in new businesses that are more suitable to have this type of a structure built, less intrusive in well-established neighborhood and residential in our area. We prefer to represent our residents that way.
Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I was just going to say that my preference would be to vote with concurrence until there's sufficient evidence to suggest otherwise. So I would be probably more in favor of voting for concurrence now, and then if there was any additional information in the next week before we get to council, then that's the venue you could have the reversal or whatever. So I suppose I'd be against the proposal on the floor.
Councillor Pierre?
I'm going to have to vote against this, only because your staff has told us that it is in concurrence with our policies and the FCM guidelines. So to say something that I know is not accurate and not true, I don't know how we can do that. We follow the same policies that the FCM has asked us to. I grew up in the neighborhood. I know it very well. I can talk about cell reception in there and how it's, not the best, and it's never really been the best. But that, we have a very specific set of policies and guidelines in front of us, and this application has met those. I agree, I don't like exactly where the placement is, but, again, they've fallen in line with what they had to do, and I don't like it. We don't have jurisdiction ultimately on this. We could say no for the sake of saying no, but that's not, the way I operate. So I'll have to vote against this at this point in time because I haven't been proven in any way that they are in non-concurrence with our application.
Councillor Haber?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the map on page 21 of our agenda, page 11 of the report, and it shows a new location, and I'm just looking at the next property to the east, and I believe that's the self-storage. Would it not make sense to move it that much further over there, or does that compromise the goal of the coverage? And if it does, then it answers my next question. So I'm hoping, if we haven't approached that self-storage, that moves it away another 60 meters. That might just be what the neighborhood has asked. Sorry? Page number?
Shows the gas.
They did ask, thank you. Well, thank you, Councillor Perry.
Any other questions to the amendments? Councillor Maracus, Councillor Maracus, and Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to, I guess, Ms. Van Leeuwen, did Bell and Rogers pay structure fee for the permit?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they are not a designated structure under the building code, and they are not required to obtain a building permit.
Just as a follow-up, through I noticed on the permits that we have for any cell tower structure that is going to be put up, that it's a $300 permit fee.
Do you say you have that fee?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the planning department, as part of our protocol, we have a site plan fee that the providers are required to submit to us. And again, I believe it's a $5,000 fee to deal with the staff processing of the application. But there is no permit fee. It's an application fee upon submission.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson?
I think when I was at FCM and they talked about this, one of the things that they were trying to accomplish was the fact that whenever these towers came forward to municipal councils, there was always a struggle to be able to, find or identify a good place, because really nobody wants them in their backyard, but yet we need them. And it was demonstrated that, data usage, which is dependent upon not necessarily density or people, but data usage is increasing. And so the demand is prompting the need for these. And so it fell upon FCM to develop a protocol to assist municipalities in being able to ensure that there was proper public consultation and that the approach, was such that really there was a lot of thought and involvement both with the municipality and with the proponents in finding a site that satisfies the requirements of the telecommunication carrier as well as the municipality. And so, when I commented on the report, you look at the reports we had last term with regards to site selection and so forth, they didn't provide very many answers with regards to alternatives or what they did. And in this case, it's a step forward. We've seen that they've talked to a number of other areas, and then they've talked to a landlord. They found a spot, and it could have been this, could have been that, but again, it's a process that's in consultation with a variety of different parties to find one that meets the best situation. Not perfect, but it's at least a compromising situation. And we can say, well, maybe you can move it here, maybe you can move it there, but as Councillor Abel commented earlier, probably what it means if you're going to keep moving it, is that it's just going to get higher and higher. And then we have other issues. You know, we had the same conversations for the cell tower at St. John's, the same conversations for the cell tower at Longo's Plaza, the same conversation for the cell tower at the GO train, and of course, the same conversation for the cell tower on Bathurst. You know, again, it always comes down to location. We'd always like to see it in a different spot, but you got to give some credit to our staff who understand completely the challenge that we have as council. And I have faith that Mr. Ramuno did everything he can to ensure that at least the site was minimized or mitigated to some degree. And that's why we have co-location. Otherwise, we could have 2 cell tower applications last term. But Mr. Ramuno, as he's indicated previously, knew that there'd be no appetite on council to subject the residents to that, and he made sure that that was done, just like he's made sure that Mrs. Morrow has gone through the proper channels to ensure that this is the most suitable site. And we can debate them all we want, but they're still going to come back. There's still always going to be a resident that comes forward with concerns. Maybe it's height. But that's why there's a protocol. So personally, I'm not in favor of non-concurrence because I don't think we can put forward a rationale that will stand up to scrutiny.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll take one exception with Councillor Thompson. I think the staff did a lot of work, and they need to be, they really need to be commended for the work that they've done. Just, Josh, you said some credit. That's all. Because it's an extremely difficult subject to deal with, and staff have struggled with this for the last couple of years. Councillors Thompson and Abel and I, when we were at FCM in Vancouver, I believe a couple of years ago, met with the Canadian Wireless Telecommunications Association with the President. And we had a long discussion about that. They've worked very diligently with both Industry Canada and with FCM to develop the protocol. We brought that back. Mr. Ramuno worked on this last year, and the protocol that we have in town follows, at this point, follows the FCM protocol. So, notwithstanding what other jurisdictions around the world may or may not do, we are under the direction of Industry Canada and Health Canada with respect to Safety Code 6, if I recall correctly. So there's a very specific set of guidelines that we work to. And when this application came forward, probably about a year ago, Mr. Ramuno, roughly, this council last term very specifically directed Rogers to go back and to talk to Bell about co-locating, and that's exactly what they've done. And the result of that, the tower is 5 meters higher, so that's obviously an impact in the area. We appreciate that, but I think it's less of an impact than 2 towers. And no one wants a tower in their backyard, I quite get that, but we all want to use our cell phones. And everybody sitting around this table has at least 1, if not 2, devices. And the devices that we are using to now, if I recall the information from the discussions we had, are 35 to 40 times the bandwidth of what, the old Nokia flip phone. So we're in a position where we're consuming copious quantities of bandwidth, which needs the infrastructure, the tower system to support that. So if we're all willing to give up our cell phones, then we can give up the towers. But I don't see anybody willing to give up their cell phones. So, Mr. Chair, I think that we are in a position where we need to follow staff's recommendation, and I believe that the issue is we have to be concurrence with non-concurrence. I can't support non-concurrence. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Humphreys for a second time on the amendment.
Thank you. So just a couple of things. First, to you, Mr. Chair. The staff's recommendation is asking us for our position. So I don't see their recommendation as one or the other. They are compliant. They did a great job. Mr. Ramuno, you did an exceptional job. And yes, you negotiated with the carriers. They came back with a co-located tower. The communication was outstanding. I want to give credit where credit's due, absolutely. And I'll tell you one thing, I don't think Rogers and Bell would enter into a partnership if it wasn't lucrative. So it's also a positive thing for them. It's a huge tower. It's way better than 2 smaller ones. But the other, and I know we're doing some great things, and we'll have our logo up there and everything else. It's awesome. And I'm not discounting it. The process was followed. We supported FCM. Councilors Roundtable did a great job. My concern is back to trying to work with businesses that are not happy about having their tower in their backyard. They approach the landowners on page 9, and they're not interested in housing the structure. It's not appropriate for them. They've got like a wrecker over there. It's not nice to have a tower behind a wreckers, but let's put it on our property behind a beautiful residential backyard. That's all I'm saying. And if there's an opportunity not to go against FCM and not to go against Industry Canada, absolutely we have to follow the guidelines, and you have to the T. It's the location of the tower. If there's an opportunity to negotiate with those business owners to put it in a more appropriate area, it will work. You'll get the reception just like you will. Where they have it, they had tried, and they're saying no. So now it falls down to the municipality to take it and upset residents. That's all I'm suggesting. If there's an opportunity to negotiate further with those businesses to help us out, be part of our community, put it where it's more appropriate and not as impacting in an established residential area, that's beautiful. And then have another tower in your backyard. Yeah, if we can avoid it, let's avoid it. If we can't, we can't. My comment here is, why concur to something just because it's following process? Great, following process. Does that mean we believe it? I don't. I don't believe going there. I think we should have a right representing our residents and stating if there's an opportunity to move this forward, it's going to go anyway. If we suggest we concur, there's no opportunity to say, yeah, we don't like where it is, but it's got to go there because it follows all the protocols. I don't see it that way. I see that the protocols are absolutely followed, but the landowners were approached from a business perspective, and they do not want these structures on the property. So now it comes back to the default of the town, and we're going to have upset residents. That's it. Thanks.
Councilor Perry? So I just want to clarify. The landlord owners who were not okay with having it on their property were the ones in blue. The one in red was okay with having it on their property. I just want to make sure, because I wasn't sure where and Councillor Humphreys is now saying that the auto wreckers don't want it. It's on the auto wreckers' property because they want it there. So that's why I'm a little bit confused with the argument. There was a different site proposed initially on page 11, and then it got moved to the new site, which is shown. So the first site was still on their property. The second site is still on their property. I had asked earlier about potentially, because I know Councillor Humphreys wasn't here for this, I had asked about moving the new location down towards, if you were to draw an imaginary line from Offord Crescent across, and that couldn't work because they would have been unable to get their trucks through and across. So they couldn't move it any more southerly on their own property. They couldn't, I guess, move it any more northernly. I don't know the reason why. I would assume that they'd be going closer to other residents. And that's not something they want to do. I don't think they want to upset anybody. Councillor Humphreys' arguments, I wasn't really sure what was going on. I wasn't following. So I think we needed to clarify the situation, and it's on their property because they wanted it on their property. But if you go to page 11, or page 9, sorry, there's a picture of, I have it in color, I don't think everybody else does. There's one current landlord, and that's the auto wreckers factory we're talking about. And there are 3 other properties who are approached, one to the north, highlighted in blue on mine, one immediately to the east, highlighted blue, and I would assume the golf course south of Bloomington. And all 3 of those were not interested in housing it on their property. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, we're all understanding everything. So it's on. You can't argue that it's not in the front yard with some people, but when Councillor Humphreys kept saying it was in the backyard of people, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Okay, if there are no further comments, I'll call the vote. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As amended, and
To the amendment.
To the amendment?
I guess, yeah. Through you to, I guess, Mr. Romero, what would have happened if the current landlord also didn't agree with housing this structure?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Rogers they'd be on a search again to find a willing host. Number one, a willing host within that catchment area where the coverage is required. And this is, they did investigate sites south of Bloomington within Richmond Hill, north, as Councilor Perry mentioned. I directed them, even further east. Again, that was outside their coverage area. So they did, investigate a number of different sites within that area where coverage is required.
Okay, just as a follow-up, is it safe to assume that the landlord is being compensated to house the structure?
Through Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of the any financial compensation. I would imagine there likely is, but you'd have to ask Ms. Morrow about that.
I'd like to call the vote on the amendments.
You have to vote.
All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? That is defeated. Now we go back to the main motion.
We need another amendment.
Yeah. We need another amendment.
May I?
Can you speak to that, Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, it would probably be appropriate to move an amendment to delete the words non-concurrence.
Councilor Perry and Mayor Dow. Councilor Perry, did you want to? Okay, you guys are forwarding you are motioning for. Comments and questions on the amendment, please. If there are none, then I'd like to. Councilor Thompson.
Mr. Romero, the cell tower that was proposed for the Longos Plaza, did this council issue a recommendation of concurrence for that one?
Through Mr. Chair, it was a while ago. No, I don't believe council did. Council did not. I don't believe council passed a resolution on that. I think the direction from council, and I can confirm, was for Bell's to investigate other sites.
So the status is still unclear at this time?
Yes, and I haven't heard back from Bell on that site. I think the direction was to investigate other sites in the area where they could perhaps co-locate on an existing tower in the area.
And that was, the co-location thing was what I was thinking about as well, because I think that was similar to what we did last term with regards to this site. And I think that's important is that, we do have a policy with regards to co-location and ensuring it no different than I'm sure with regards to what Oakville did with 200 meters from residential. And so we have taken some of those steps to try and mitigate those issues. But it is important, just like when we deal with planning issues, is that if you're going to reject it, it needs to be clearly identified the rationale behind it. And so that's why, in this case, the protocol's been followed. Staff have made ample direction towards exploring alternative properties, finding better sites, and so I think that in this case, concurrence is what must be put forward.
Questions or concerns? Any other comments on the amendment? So I'll call the vote. All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? That carries.
Back to the main motion.
Okay, so we're going to go back to the main motion as amended. If there are no further comments, I'll call the vote on that. All in favor of the motion as amended? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. Okay. Okay, so now we are back to item 1, which was pulled by Councillor Abel. To put that on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will move the recommendation and what we have on the floor.
Okay, and second? Councillor Marcus? You have the floor, Ralph.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to thank staff for bringing this forward. It was something right after the election with all the signs, and I appreciate the report that there's going to be an audit. I'm wondering, through Mr. Chair, if there's going to be an opportunity for residents to forward where they may see a possibility or an opportunity to consolidate the signs. And if there is, how we're going to do that.
Mr. Simnasos?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have to comply with traffic policies and traffic guidelines, so my preference would be to allow staff to go through the community at least once, and then if there are still opportunities that some residents may feel warrant some consolidation, we can look at those individually. My fear is that there may be a lot of requests for consolidation where we can't create consolidation because of distances and coverage requirements. So that's my preference. However, if council chooses that I'm open to any feedback from the community. I'm just not sure we want to solicit full open community consultation.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I appreciate that comment. I can understand that could be overwhelming. What I wanted to do is probably because of the scope is so large. At first go around, we may not be seeing all the opportunities. And so then if Mr. Semenoskis is indicating that they'll do it once and then at that time possibly re-engage and see if there are ways. You might just be able to list protocol by that time, what has to be and the distances. That might filter some of the engagement with the community. So I just thought I'd bring that up. Some of the examples I saw in some of the newer developments with the driveways very close, you can appreciate why this all came about. If I should get your comment.
If I may, through you, Mr. Chair, what I suggest is what we can do is provide some guidelines on the website so that people can see what our criteria are, and if they see something that fits the criteria, then by all means, at least there's some guidance, and it's a little more understanding and knowledge as to what we're trying to look for.
Thank you very much.
Any other speakers? Okay, with no other questions, I'll put the motion on the floor for a vote. All in favor to receive? Oppose? That carries, Mr. Clerk. Next item is item 4, forwarded by Councillor Marcus.
I'll move as is.
Second. Councillor Tom? Give the floor, or Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I went through this, and I'd like to see the action plan possibly go back to EAC for some work and possibly look at new initiatives that would be more conducive to this time frame. I mean, it hasn't been updated in 5 years, and I think it's time to do the updating, and I'd like to see it go through that committee, and I'd possibly put an amendment on the floor, but I'd like to hear what everyone else has to say about the report first.
That's the plan anyway. It's on the work program for this year, Mr. Rumino.
Okay. Mr. Rumino, do you have any comments?
Yes, to you, Mr. Chair. It is staff's intent to update the plan. It is a 2010 plan in 2016. So as part of our 2016 budget discussion, I'll be presenting an item to council on the update of the plan. And of course, as part of the public consultation, our first stop will be with the Environmental Advisory Committee. But the intent is to update the current plan in 2016.
Anyone have any comments, questions? Councillor Thompson?
We talk about the action plans, strategic plans, as living documents, that they continually evolve. So while I hear Mr. Munoz say that, it's due for a complete revisit in 2016, why would we not have the Environmental Committee take a look at it as a living document to see if there are some more recent initiatives to inject into it, not to redo it, not to overhaul it, but I think you can always update it or look at least to say, yes, it's still current and provide some feedback. It wasn't too long ago that we were talking about the advisory committees and a comment was made, well, there's not enough for them to do, so let's just have them meet every 2 months. So now here's something that the Environmental Advisory Committee can very well provide feedback on as part of their terms of reference, and there seems to be an unwillingness to send it to them. And so I think it makes perfect sense to allow them to comment on it and perhaps maybe make some suggestions along the line that fit with the action plan. Not to overhaul it, but just to at least to take a look at it, see if it's current, or maybe see there are some more recent initiatives that may be of interest for council to take a look at. That's my opinion.
Mr. Carpy has a comment.
Through Mr. Chair, I don't have any objection to that. I think the sequence of events was that the strat plan was going to be updated, which would precipitate another strategic document. So we're at the leisure of council, but that was the thinking behind it, because it was a sequential thing. Get the strat plan, get the pillars, get some, one of the recommendations may have been update the corporate environmental action plan and some other things that come out of that document that we can also fold in. We were, of course, at council's pleasure.
Any other thoughts, Councillor Thompson?
I guess my only comment with regards to that is this environmental action plan was created before our strat plan, and so it really hasn't then been updated since the creation of our strategic plan. And so now we're going to go and have a conversation about another strategic plan before looking at updating this one. So this one seems to be outside the envelope of our strategic plan discussion, so I think that's even more reason to bring it back to EAC and be it on the current strategic plan or on the discussion that's going to ensue after this with regards to the strategic plan. Either way, I'm still in favor of bringing it to the Environmental Committee.
If there are no other questions, I'll put the... Councilor Marcus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess at this time I'd like to put an amendment to the motion to also have the environmental action plan put forward to the Environmental Advisory Committee for their thoughts and, I'm not sure, refer the action plan to the Environmental Advisory Committee for their thoughts and possible any new initiatives that they look forward to bring forward to council.
Can I have a seconder? Councillor Thompson?
May I seek clarification?
Sure. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to seek clarification. So the motion on the floor right now is to receive the Corporate Environmental Action Plan Progress Report 2014. Is the amendment to refer the progress report or the plan? I just want to make sure that I'm recording the plan. The plan, and to report back to council?
Yes.
On recommendations to update or improve or... Okay.
Any speakers to the amendment only? Councilor Marcus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm same lines, Councilor Thompson. I think it's a living document to send it to the Environmental Advisory Committee, have them do some work on it, see if there's any new initiatives. I think it's, from my understanding of reading through this, I don't believe back in 2010 that they did anything external and paid any money through budget to get this document created. So they did it all internal. They did it through the Environmental Advisory Committee, so I don't see why we don't update it, use basically the blueprint that they've already designed and just update it and bring in those new initiatives that would, be what we're looking for now. Maybe things have changed. So I think it's a good idea to send it to them and have them come back to us with those new initiatives, and we can approve it. Or not approve it, whichever way.
Councilor Pierre?
I would just add, as the former chair, that's my recollection of how this was done. I wasn't around for the process, but I very much was around for the discussions after the fact about the process, so to my knowledge, that's how things went. I would say that it is already a living document because the actions in it are getting accomplished. I've always understood a living document or a dead document, the difference being once it's on the shelf that nobody opens and the other one gets some action and people see it and things get accomplished in it. So I don't see any harm in going for a quick refresh. I don't discount the value of, going through the full process again. But if we just want to get some input, there's nothing wrong with that in my view.
Councilor Thompson?
Thank you. Through to Mr. Simonauskas. Mr. Simonauskas, over the last little while, you've presented a number of different initiatives that both through the region as well as through your department with regards to waste and recycling and all that's happening. Has all of those initiatives and the directions both of the town of Aurora as well as the region reflective back in the economic action plan, or could some of those find their way through this update process into the environmental action plan?
Mr. Simonauskas?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the Environmental Action Plan, we work with the staff who support the Environmental Action Plan, so as we're going through our activities, we're trying to fit within the 4 pillars of fire, water, earth, and air. So if the plan is due for an update, we will definitely take whatever initiatives that we've identified since its initial creation and do whatever updates we can, but we are also tracking any additional activities that we're doing with staff so they understand what we're doing, where they fit. So it's an integrated process, but it definitely wouldn't hurt to review it again and combine all of our efforts.
Any other speakers to the amendment? Seeing none, put this on the floor for the vote. All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. Any speakers to the main motion as amended? Seeing none, call the vote. All in favor of the main motion as amended? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. Next item, pulled by Councillor Abel, item 5.
Item 4, pulled by Councillor Marcus.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, item 4, pulled by Councillor Marcus. We just did that.
Sorry, my mistake. 5.
Okay.
My mistake.
Clerk's mistake. So we will, next item was item 5, pulled by Councillor Abel.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move what we have there, but I think I'd like to make an amendment. But perhaps what I'll do is I'll just make a few comments, see if there's any others.
Do we have a second?
We need a motion.
Mayor Dahl? Mayor Dahl seconds.
You didn't say you were moving it. Are you moving it as is?
I'll move it as is. Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Second by Mayor Dahl. Okay.
Thank you. I want to go to page 3 of the report under the conclusions at the very bottom, and it says that the Concerts in the Park series continues to grow in attendance and has become an Aurora summer tradition, and the current model is sustainable and successful while meeting the needs and expectations of the local community. The addition of the AWBF does not add value to the Concerts in the Park program and has the potential of introducing conflicting programming and additional costs. So I appreciate the comments in the conclusion. This series has, it covers a wide genre of music, and it is a tradition. I know people love going there in the summer. It's very well attended. We have two very good MCs, and people have learned to, residents expect to see on Wednesday during the summer, during the 8 weeks, a concert. And I think that's just fabulous. And I don't want to move any further. However, this year, we have 9 weeks in the summer. And we also have a genre that's not covered. So if you look at page 2 of the report, in the middle, the lineup includes rock, folk, jazz, Celtic, country, and Motown. And so we have 1 week, and I think our residents would expect another, not knowing whether there's 8 or 9 weeks, they would just say, we expect Wednesday concerts in the park. And then there's also a genre that's not in place. So adding the Aurora Winter Blues Fest, by coming that last week and providing some blues, I think that's great. I think it would be expected from our residents. It doesn't have to be with the concert in the park, but working with the idea that we're expanding and people would expect it, there would be no confusion by adding separately than the concerts in the park, the Aurora Winter Blues Fest. I think it's called Blues and Cruise, what was proposed. So I think it's a great idea to take advantage of that spare week, so to say. And of course, with the Blues Festival in the winter, supporting chats, and the Blue Shelter to the tune of $40,000 in 4 short years. It's hard to imagine any festival in this town coming up with numbers like that in supporting the community. And also the tremendous contribution to community and youth, which is substantial. And this is part of what is going to be for the concert in the park on this last 9th Wednesday this summer, September 2nd. I think it's something we should promote. We'll see Juno performing blues performer, which will be outstanding, and possibly 1 or 2 of our youth showcasing 1 to 3 songs each during breaks, and the talent there will be outstanding as well. We've all seen it for those that have seen the Winter Blues Fest. So it's a great idea to come forward, and I think we should be supporting it. And to that, my amendment would be that council, that a standalone event be presented by the Aurora Winter Blues Fest be approved and supported by council. So that it says that there is no conflict, and it is basically, it's a great idea because it works well for the community. And then I would like to add a second amendment, if I may, Mr. Chair. And I don't know, Mr. Clerk, should I get a support on the first one, or can I maybe roll them in the same one? Maybe you want to hear what I'm going to say.
Yeah, let me hear what you're going to say.
Thank you very much. That also in support that there be some, well, I don't think you're going to like this, Mr. Clerk, that along with the live music strategy that Council adopted last term, that we put out a promotion outlining all the music events that are occurring this summer season, starting with the Gospel Festival in June, followed by the 8 weeks of the concert in the park, then the Winter Blues Fest, Blues and Cruise, the Rib Fest with the Hold Down Showdown, and then of course the Magna Hold Down. And it kind of gives a banner to what we are doing in this town this summer, including the town's initiatives and other ones that are doing tremendous work, and highlight what this town supports, and that is a live music strategy, and this would be the beginning of it. And so I would ask, my comment would be, I would ask Mr. Garvey to speak to that if it could be easily done with a minimal sort of expense, following along with our notice board, et cetera, et cetera. Mr. Clerk, should I do them one at a time?
Sure, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair, just for clarification, I believe the first proposed amendment was to add the words to the clause that the standalone event be presented by the Aurora Winter Blues Festival be approved and endorsed by council?
If supported and endorsed, I don't know.
If I might, through Mr. Chair, that would actually become redundant, because if council actually adopts this recommendation as is at the next meeting, that is endorsed and supported by council. So as it's written, the council would be adopting to approve, which is the same thing as endorsing and supporting, the Aurora Winter Blues Festival. So it would become slightly redundant or unnecessary amendment. However, the second one would certainly be, since it would be, if I'm understanding correctly, a direction to staff, that would be definitely appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And of course, you're right. I would just merely have to support the recommendation, and that would be the endorsement. So then there would just be one amendment, and if I could get a seconder for it, and I'll be a little clear and concise, that a promotion, a communication to outline, in line with the live music strategy, outline all the music events occurring in Aurora this summer.
Do you have a second? Councillor Humphreys?
And through you, Mr. Chair, I was just looking to Mr. Garvey if he might make a comment on how appropriate that might be.
Mr. Garvey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think that's a difficult task for us to put a promotional material celebrating all the winter events or the musical events in town. I think we can accomplish that.
And thank you. So it would be a package, Mr. Garvey, through you, Mr. Chair?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to speak to Mr. Kemp and see what he had in mind, but at least a poster and handouts and some pamphlet at a minimum, plus the regular promotion of our website and
our
notice board.
Thank you very much.
Mayor Dow?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I certainly support the concept. I think we need to be very clear that what we're promoting is a third-party event. So the Gospel Festival that Councilor Abel mentioned is a third-party event. This blues, the additional concert on a Wednesday night will be a third-party event. So I think we need to be clear what is a town event and what is a third-party event. I don't have a problem supporting it. Indeed, Councilor Abel and I spoke with Jamie McDonald about this, and I said, we would certainly do what we could to help promote it. I just think that from a process point of view, we need to be very clear about what is a current event and what's a third-party event. So I just think whatever we do, we take that into account.
Councilor Perry? No? Councilor
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of course, that makes sense. What Magna Hoedown would be another example of a third-party event. The spill out in the good of the organizations, what they contribute to the music and to the community is also noteworthy and deserves our little bit of support and promoting and moving it. It lends to that we're in the spirit, again, as a live music strategy, but of course I think you would make it sort of however the town presents, and then I don't mean to melt them all in one. Thank you very much.
Any other speakers to the amendment? Councillor Thompson?
Just to be clear, and I do appreciate the fact that we're going to identify what's town and what's third party, because I think you do need to clarify that. What's sort of, the criteria in terms of what is being promoted and what isn't? Because, there may be other ones that maybe we're not thinking of tonight, but they may come forward and say, well, what about my music night or music festival? And so how are we defining the criteria for what gets included and what doesn't get included?
Who will respond to that question? Mr. Downey, or?
I'll take a stab at it.
Oh.
To you, Mr. Chair, we haven't set up criteria about how that's going to be promoted or who is going to be promoted. I think it falls within what we're trying to accomplish with our cultural map. We are going to be holding a meeting in June with our committee that that assisted us with the cultural master plan and presenting them with a program for developing a cultural map, which will allow groups to engage or be part of that cultural map that people can then access and find out about events, where they are, any costs associated with them, any details related to them, and that would be that information would be provided by the vendor themselves, and we will be setting up criteria with regards to what vendors would be permitted to provide information on that website and who would not. So we haven't got those criteria set up right now. In fact, we haven't got a cultural map, but it is something we're working towards, because very much I think it would be great if the Aurora Blues Festival could simply access a site that then they could provide all their information, and that would go out to anyone who was then interested in any cultural event happening in Aurora. And I agree. I just think it's important to have a criteria or process set in place, especially if you're going to do posters. I mean, maybe the farmers market, maybe they want to add all the people that they have every Sunday morning. Maybe there are other ones as well. And so I just think you need to just define how we're going to determine who's included and who isn't, so that it doesn't end up before us as a debate.
Okay, if there are no further speakers, I call the vote on the amendments. All in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. Go back to the main motion as amended. If there are no further comments on that, I'll call the vote. Councilor Marcus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make sure on something. Are we, when we approve this, I think it's great to have the Blues, Winter Blues Festival have an event on that Wednesday night, but I was just curious, when we approve this, are we approving the event already, or will we be getting a presentation from Aurora Winter Blues Festival as to what they will be doing? They just permit the park? Okay. Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I'll put a vote on the motion as amended. All in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. Next item, 7, pulled by Councillor Thompson.
At this point, I'm only comfortable moving the first two clauses.
Okay. Do we have a second? Mayor Dahl? Go ahead, Mr. Thompson.
Through you to Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, can you just sort of, I guess, talk a little bit more about the Imajet? I mean, I saw within the report there is some, I guess, concern, or it's heavily regulated, I guess. You know, it's allowed under the pesticide ban, but specific uses. I just have some hesitation with approving it as is, and I'd like to hear a little bit more information with regard specifically to Imajet and what hazards it may or may not pose to residents, to wildlife, to pets.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, appreciate an opportunity to speak about this. This is a result of quite a lengthy conversation that Manager Parks and I had with regards to this report and bringing this information to Council. We felt it was important that we present all information that comes to us, to Council, so that we ensure that we're making the best decisions possible with as much information as possible. As you know, we've done several reports with regards to the emerald ash borer, and it had been identified that triazine, the chemical that we are presently using, was the most effective control with regards to the emerald ash borer. That continues to be the case. However, there is some evidence that triazine is more effective if used on a yearly basis as opposed to a bi-yearly basis. So we're researching that, and whether or not we need to double our program with regards to injection of trees is something that we're looking at. However, as well as the effectiveness of triazine or the information coming to us with regards to the effectiveness of triazine, we're also finding that now there's an alternative chemical, and Imajet is the alternative chemical. It has been seen to be a good measure of control over the emerald ash borer. It is not something that is approved for use by this council, which is the reason it is before you, because we have no authority to use this chemical, and it is less expensive than the chemical that we're using right now, so there's a cost saving associated with it, which is not the reason it's here. It's here because there's an additional control measure. Regardless of whether it's more expensive or less expensive is not necessarily the point. We're just giving you all the information related to it, and financial is one of those issues. So we were looking at developing a program where we were continuing to use triazine, but we were also looking at using Imajet in concert with that, and then somewhat doing some of our own studies to find out which is more effective in dealing with the emerald ash borer. So the purpose of this report is twofold: provide you information with regards to what we've been doing so far and how well we've been doing, but also to provide you with an alternative or an additional alternative to our present program of injecting trees every other year with triazine. Thank you. I think, through you to Mr. Downey, if I can as well, just within the report, it talks about that Imajet still is subject to some controversy, specifically with regards to, the agricultural industry, and there's some concerns around it. And while in the report it references honeybee colonies, but I guess, is there any controversy or concerns with using it in any capacity here in Aurora?
Sorry, Mr. Downey.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. No is the answer. The quick answer is no. Certainly the honeybee industry is very attuned to any use of any chemicals, and we're fully aware of that. This is something that is injected into the tree. It will have, or does not have any impact with regards to that within the confines of treating trees in Aurora. It may as an agricultural use, but we are using it strictly as an injection pesticide within ash trees alone. Thank you.
Any other questions? Pastor Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question. What is on the floor at the moment? Is it just the first two clauses? Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Humphries?
I'm happy to put the third clause on. I didn't want to put it on until I'd had a chance to ask those questions of Mr. Downey with regards to the controversy within the report. So at this time, I'm okay with putting it forward as an amendment.
You have a second? Okay. Sure, Councilor Humphries on the main.
The amendment, speaking of the amendment.
Okay, sorry, we're speaking on the amendment still. Councilor Humphries?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Councilor Thompson's point, I appreciate Mr. Downey providing an update on, the perspective. I am a little bit worried because I have actually received some complaints, not complaints, but just some information on the honeybee decline in Ontario. Just worried that will someone come back to us and say, use this on the trees, and therefore, are we, so the U.S. has had great results, and from what they can see, no adverse effects. Do we know any other municipalities that are currently using the Imajet? Do we know if anyone else is using it, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Brown?
To you, Mr. Chair, no. There are no other municipalities in Ontario using ImaChat. We will be the first.
I always love to be the first on stuff that I'm... It's a little bit weird about this one. Okay, so Mr. Chair, I guess, and I do appreciate, was the University of Oakville, University State, Michigan, I believe, which is a great university, there's some elaborate testing. My apologies, that's for the original tree as in, right? Just to confirm, the studies that the universities have conducted are for the tree as in treatment? Just want to confirm that.
Mr. Downey?
I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure the question, but I'll do my best. The studies have been with regards to their effectiveness on the emerald-ash borer. The concern, every pesticide is a concern to the honeybee industry. So they have raised that as an issue. However, honeybees are primarily affected when using broad sprays on agricultural crops as opposed to injections within a tree. What we're looking for this evening is the opportunity to use it. We will continue to do additional research. If we find that there are some concerns, we'll certainly bring those concerns back to council. But we felt it was important, as I said, it was quite a lengthy conversation between Mr. Tree and myself with regards to whether we bring this forward and is it something we should be looking at. I think there's enough evidence to say that, it's something we should be looking at, particularly if we are now hearing that perhaps treason is not as effective as we originally thought it was, and now we're going to have to double our efforts with regards to that, to the use of that chemical. We may have some concerns with regards to the effectiveness of the program.
Councilor Abel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, when we first approached emerald-ash borer back in 2011, 2012, it was such a new, we had just for the first time set up nets to capture airborne emerald-ash borer. We didn't really know how to detect it until then. It's an ongoing learning issue that we have. So Treasan at the time was the only introduction of pesticide, and now the states, which is affected by emerald-ash borer, and it makes sense that there will always be research and alternate means to either curb the expense and or the effectiveness. So here's, not surprisingly, after 5 years, in Michigan, which is heavily affected by the emerald-ash borer, an alternative, more effective, cheaper application. We were going in with a recovery plan, and we should be investigating these as we go along. It makes sense that we might look at, after 5 years, saying, is Treasan the best? Is it the most effective? How is it working? We have no metrics to know otherwise, unless emerald-ash borer had been here for 30, 40 years. But that's not the case. It's like a lot of evasive species. It's on you. You don't know what to do until it's too late. And we just look at other species like zebra mussels or something. We have no way of treating these. So I would go along with the recommendation. And from our conversation about the effects on bees, if we're injecting into emerald-ash trees, it shouldn't affect bees unless the bees are in the tree. So assuming that they're not in the trees, I think we're saving that concern right there. I understand broad spraying on agriculture, and that is devastating. And affects all species. So this is a very specific, isolated, and it doesn't really affect anything else but the tree and the application. So I appreciate the concerns brought up, but I would like to look for more effective, more efficient, and more cost reduction ways to go at this huge problem that we have with our canopies. And like we go through tree bylaws, just losing one tree or 3 trees can put this council in its tracks for hours. We're talking about thousands of trees right here in our town. So we have to be moving along with the recommendations and paying close attention to what other areas are doing to combat the destruction of our ash trees. So I know we haven't got it on the floor, but has the third clause been put on?
It's what we're talking about right now.
Oh, well then, I'm in order then. Thank you very much.
Mr. Downey, so even though the province of Ontario is, says here, likely to enact a partial ban on the neonicotinoid importing of like grains and field crops, just to be clear, so you don't anticipate that having any impact on us utilizing that chemical on the trees?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no. We suspect they would more than like to put restrictions on the application as opposed to the chemical itself, so that you could use the chemical in certain situations, but you couldn't use it in other types of applications. So that's more than likely the route they'll take.
Okay. Okay, if there are no other speakers to the amendment, I'll call the vote. All in favor of the amendment? For all 3 clauses?
No.
Mr. Clark?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, right now the amendment on the floor is to add the 3rd clause of the staff recommendation to the main motion, so that's the amendment. And then we would vote on all 3 clauses.
Okay. All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Okay, that carries, Mr. Clerk. Going back to the main motion, so that's all 3 clauses. I'll call the vote. All in favor of the motion as amended for all 3 clauses? Opposed? That passes, Mr. Clerk. Next item is item 8, also pulled by Councillor Thompson.
I can't remove the recommendation as it is on the screen.
Can someone else move that motion? Councillor Abel?
Second.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Beard? Okay, Councillor Thompson?
As I stated previously, I don't think that at this point in time that it's necessary to go back out, bring in a consultant, go through the exact same process we did a few years ago and redo the strategic plan. I think that it is something that can be done through EDAC and through some of the other advisory committees and in-house to update the plan and identify those short, medium, and long-term goals, as well as identify any new ones that want to be brought in. But I think that we created that document as a living document. The foundation is still solid. Sure, some of the objectives or some of the actions need to be updated and reflective of where we are today, but the overall document is sound. And I don't see any reason to spend $70,000 and go back out and do the same thing and recreate the document. I just don't think that it makes good sense.
Any other speakers? Councillor Humphries?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in agreement with Councillor Thompson on this one. I was hoping that we could possibly get, maybe have a work session together with council and staff, kind of go through the current strategic plan. Heart to heart, is any of the areas of development or focus in that plan really off base? Do we need to continue going in that direction and build on it? And when I look through the plan, I don't see anything other than I want to continue on growing on that existing plan and building it out, maybe looking at updating some of the end goals and targets. I know lots of things are completed, but I think within ourselves we can build that a bit stronger and maybe have a public consultation at the end of that ourselves to hear what public says about it, see if we hit the nail on the head. I think at this point we're just not the point to go out there and source out a consultant and do a whole intercepting reviews and everything else that we've done before. I think we're going to hear the same thing, and probably more of keeping the small town feel as we continue to grow, and I hear that all the time. So for me, I'd love to see this remain in-house, and I'll work with staff and maybe some core members of council to build upon the current plan and then share it with public and see what the feedback is.
Anyone else would like to speak on this? Councillor Abel.
I'm in agreement with the two comments. I sat with three other councillors and the mayor on this. I think Councillor Perry, myself, and Councillor Thompson all sat in on the last strategic plan. We have a little more ownership on it. I think the recommendation is every 5 years. And, we'll be coming up to that fairly soon. But I thought it was a lot of money the last time. Most of that work was in the consulting, and they were intercept and key. And I think it's a good idea that our council look over who was interviewed and how it was done, and work from there. Perhaps after a review and some recommendations, we'd be in a better position to either support it or go ahead with getting a consultant service. At this time, I'm not. And I don't know, Mr. Chair, if it's best that we have a work day to do it, perhaps not anytime soon, because we're very busy until the summer, but perhaps in the fall we should have a good introduction into exactly what's going on, vet out to the committees. I think are a good place to get some feedback, and ask for any comments from the general public.
Mr. Garvey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if it pleases council, perhaps a suggestion might be to refer this back to staff and come back with a work plan based on a staff-only resource update to the strategic plan. Then council can see what the process might be based on a staff-only plan.
Councillor Abel?
So, Mr. Chair, I think based on what Mr. Garvey said, that we would defeat this, and we'll check with Mr. Clerk, and then put out that recommendation along the lines of what he just suggested. I don't know.
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair, I suggest it would actually just, you don't need to defeat it, simply make a recommendation to council that they refer this back to staff to provide further options to review the strategic plan in staff only or along those lines. It's just about a motion to refer.
Mr. Chair, I would move that what the clerk just recommended. So we refer back to staff for a work plan.
Should we put a vote on that?
No, seconder first.
Okay, we have a seconder, Councillor Marcus.
No questions on the amendment.
Okay. So any questions on the amendment, on the motion to refer? Councillor Thompson?
I guess just so I understand, because I hear, staff develop work plan, is there an opportunity for the advisory committee, specifically EDAC, to have an opportunity to comment or participate in the plan? Because, in the previous term, they were not stewards, but they helped sort of guide the development of the plan as it came back to EDAC on a number of occasions. And I'm just wondering, is there a role for them and or the other committees as well in this process? When you come back with that work plan, are you going to identify that, or is this strictly going to be in-house?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it was always been anticipated to use the structure in place, the advisory committee, to solicit feedback. And the only thing that, when I say in-house, that would mean instead of using a consultant to facilitate and to do public consultation or whatever, it would be our own staff doing the leading part of it. So the process would still be to solicit council feedback, maybe conduct a workshop, as well as use the advisory committees to solicit those action items too. I'm also gathering that no need to review the mission, values, and vision. Just go to the nuts and bolts of it and try to develop a work plan associated with soliciting a new set of advancements to the vision.
You know, and I'm supportive of that. I think that's similar to what we've done with some things such as the Economic Action Plan. You know, it wasn't a question of redoing it, it was just going through the process. And, as this has come before us, I've looked back at the old reports, and when we approved this in 2012, the plan then, just a few years ago, was really just to regularly review it. And even in that report, it said at the start of the next council term, there would be a comprehensive review to validate the plan by council. And so, I'm not sure why we've deviated after just a couple of years from the process that we've approved in those previous reports, in my opinion, because we haven't had a comprehensive review to validate the plan through council. We haven't had those council workshops that the plan talked about in 2012 when we approved it, and so that's why I've continued to say the same thing. I don't want to go out to consultants. I don't want to redo the whole plan. I want to adhere to the original plan that we developed back in 2012. The foundation is solid. Yeah, some of the actions, some of the objectives need updating. I'm sure there's some new things that have come along that the council would like to see put forward as goals for this term and maybe for the next term as well. So I'm, again, supportive of it being kept within in-house and utilizing the committees that we have.
Any other speakers? Okay, if there's no more speakers, then I'll call the vote to refer this to staff. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. Okay, so we're on to new business or general information. I'll start from my right this time, Councilor Marakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through Mr. Simonowskis, I was just wondering if there's anything new on the left turn restrictions that we passed from the region. Is there any news about when there would be any implementation of the pilot program?
Certainly through you, Mr. Chair. We have had a couple of meetings with the region. We have worked with or consulted with their staff. So where we are right now is we've presented all the opportunities along Yonge Street, the lane reductions, the left turn restrictions, additional right turn southbound, as well as some of the parking opportunities along Yonge Street as well. The region has taken that information and they are looking at that information in concert with their transportation master plan, which is currently underway. We also reached out further to our conversation earlier this week. We also reached out to an operations arm of the region to see if we could actually implement a quicker pilot, I guess, of the left turn restrictions, and we're still waiting. I've talked to a couple of the directors there, and they were going to consult internally and then provide some additional direction as to what might be possible, and then have them come in and present to council as to what the options might be.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Just hoping to get a comment from Mr. Garvey with regards to the solar project on the SARC. I saw that we had, corporate environmental plan. It does talk about it. Recently, I know we've talked about it. There was a sense that we would come to some sort of agreement with the proposed third party by the end of May. I'm just curious for an update.
Through Mr. Chair, maybe I refer that to Mr. Maher, who's closer to the agreement than I am.
Mr. Maher?
Through Mr. Chair, we are actually getting very close to finishing up our discussions and our negotiations with the solar project vendor. We have meetings with them actually scheduled for this Friday to go over last elements with that agreement. So once that's finalized and we've satisfied town concerns with facilities and legal concerns as well, we hope to have that wrapped up within the next next week or two after that.
And would an update or any information be coming forth to council at that time? Sorry, through you to Mr. Marr.
Mr. Marr?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would have to speak with Mr. Aurora and others who are involved with the project, but we certainly could if council wanted to provide a bit of an update and let council know when that project is going to come online.
Great.
Councilor Rainbow?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. John Westway and I guess it's Mary Street intersection at Wellington, the goals, when it empties, we don't have a right turn when you're heading north on Mary and a right turn to go east. And it's more and more prevalent in my mind that a right turn lane would be great in moving that traffic. I was just wondering if, through you, Mr. Chair, if Mr. Simonauskas could give me an update on where we stand there? If we're standing at all.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have to repave Mary in the near future. I know it's getting close. So what I can do is I can provide an email to council as to when we plan to redesign, because there'll be some, I believe we'll be putting sidewalks as well along Mary, at least on one side, so that will be part of that design proposal. But what I can do is find out when that's scheduled and bring that, and provide either through next meeting's agenda or an email just to update council on timing of that.
And in the interim, Mr. Chair, if I may ask, in the interim, is it possible to, with the lanes, with the left turn lane, to create that right turn lane for a temporary measure? I'm sure it would prove quite popular.
Through Mr. Chair, there isn't enough room right now curb to curb, but what we can do is look at I can have staff do a preliminary design and bring a brief report back to council as to what a cost might be to extend or widen that intersection as well.
Thank you. And just not the whole intersection, just something temporary when the grand design comes through in a year or two, or whenever your report says that. That would be great, Mr. Simonauskas.
Councilor Humphries?
Mr. Chair, I was going to ask the same thing as Councilor Abel, and I had a resident asking me when that was going to happen, so if we can get an update, that'd be great. Thanks.
Councilor Tom? No? Mayor Dahl?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last week we were discussing comments with respect to the combined review of the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan, the Greenbelt Plan, the Niagara Escarpment Plan, and Places to Grow. And there was comments made last week about an extension of the deadline for comments to be submitted to the provincial government. I asked Mr. Rumuno to check today, and there is no official extension to the deadline. So there may or may not be, but there is no official. We have not been advised by the government that there is an official extension to the deadline. Comments have to be submitted by tomorrow. Is that correct, Mr. Rumuno? Tomorrow? So I just want this council to know that we, unless we constitute a special council meeting right now to submit the comments that have already been developed for us by staff, we will not be submitting comments on the upcoming draft legislation on either the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan, the Greenbelt Plan, the Places to Grow, and Niagara Escarpment Plan, which doesn't affect us. If council wishes, we could waive procedural bylaw. We could invoke a special council meeting right now to simply pass the comments. The clerk is puffing out his cheeks saying, I don't want to do that, but I'm just giving that's our option. Now, this is draft legislation. The full, which will be developed over the next, I'm going to guess, 8 months, coming back to us in the spring, late spring probably of 2016, when we will have another opportunity to submit comments. Now, most of the people who appeared here last week to discuss comments have already made their presentations through their organizations. There was also a number of meetings held by the provincial government soliciting input on those plans. So they've already submitted their comments. Unfortunately, we will not get an opportunity to officially submit ours. They still may consider them, I don't know that. but there is no guarantee that they will consider them. So I just use that, first of all, as a caution that we should be listening to staff when they give us advice as to when we should be submitting things. And when it comes forward next time in the fall, one of the things that the region submitted, and we had a day-long, literally a day-long session last Thursday, going over the various comments with respect to the staff report at the region. And one of the top requirements was that the provincial government extend the time. They granted 90 days, which in the overall scheme of things is almost like saying, we're not really interested in what you have to say, but we'll, if you want to put something in, that's fine. So the region has requested, along with a number of other people, a dramatic extension in that time to at least 180 days in terms of comments on the final draft legislation before it goes before the House for final reading. So I just leave that, and I won't request a special council meeting, Mr. Clerk, but I think that we need to be, quite frankly, more on top of our game when these things come up. Thank you, Mr. Clerk, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Perry? So that concludes our new business. We have one closed session item tonight about personal information about an identifiable individual in labor or employment negotiations. Can I ask for a motion to go into closed session following adjournment? Councillor Perry, Councillor Tom, all in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Marcus, seconded by Councillor Abel. All in favor? Opposed? That carries.